since we love having you on, we thought like we would lob you a softball right out of the gates. We've been having this conversation. I was trying to console. This is weird because I'm not a Chiefs fan at all, but I happen to like this particular person. He's very worried about Buffalo and the matchup, and rightfully so. I mean, Buffalo's a good team, and we'll get to them. And I told him to relax. I said, you got arguably the best staff. You have the best quarterback, and you probably have the best singular unit. And I said the Kansas City Chiefs defense, the best singular unit left playing in the playoffs. And I thought about it. He's like, you think? And I go, yeah, I situationally, Spags, like I think so. If I asked you, offense, defense, special teams, the best singular unit left playing for you, who is it?
Man, actually, the Chiefs' defense is a really good one because, Detroit's gone, so you can't pick their offense. Baltimore's gone, so you can't pick their offense or the post-Kyle Hamilton defense. The fact that the Chiefs have Jalen Watson back, I think, really speaks to they're a completely different unit when they've got both Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie in their secondary. So I think actually you're
So
making a really good argument here.
the Eagles are better defensively. I still think the Chiefs overall defensively are better.
Yeah, no. I agree. I think that that's actually because a lot of the statistics that we're using to evaluate these offenses and defenses maybe don't take into account the context of, which players are back and which are not. And I think getting Jalen Watson back, having him with, obviously Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, and especially Trent McDuffie, I think says a lot. Justin Reed has been playing well, but having all of that unit together with Spagnuolo, right? Having maybe the best individual game plan guy, among the coaching staffs.
Oh,
I think, yeah, Spags, yeah. I think really gives you potentially that edge, right? Because first of all, I'm not crazy high on the Eagles relative to these other teams, so it's a little bit easier for me to be to be a little bit more optimistic here. But yeah, you've got a good point.
That aren't either.
They feel gettable. That's what we keep saying.
Yeah.
They just
they should have won by 30 yesterday. And
right.
Down to a final possession. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the same thing happened against the Packers, right? You're like, okay, you should be handling this team with a lot more, if you're a second seed, and they didn't do it. And I've been kind of a little bit suspicious of the Eagles all year. I just think that Jalen Hurts is not playing quarterback at the level that you'd expect a team, the second overall seed, to be able to do. I think there are some susceptibilities that he has against the blitz. I think this is primarily a Saquon Barkley team, which isn't a bad, place to be. He's obviously a tremendous player, right? But I think that I would rather be outstanding at quarterback than I would be at running back. And I think that that's where you're at with a lot of these other teams that are left in the playoffs. So, the Eagles are good, right? It's hard to be where they're at without being good. But I just think that they're, like you said, a lot more gettable, right? Like I think that, there are some weaknesses at the linebacker core that you can exploit, especially if you've got a player like, I don't know, Travis Kelce, right? Or, they've got, some issues like defeating the blitz, given, who the quarterback is. And I think that they're really just kind of built to win one kind of football. Obviously, that's taken them really far, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to like win a Super Bowl. So, it's also hard for me to bet against the Chiefs, even if they're having the most disappointing year that they've had in a long time. Disappointing one seed, right? So
that's the funniest thing, man. Because like I made the argument. You brought up Travis Kelce. I go, can I make the argument the Chiefs also have the best singular pass catcher left in the playoffs as well?
And he asked going into break, and I was like, well, statistically, there has no argument, right? He's been prolific in the postseason. But he should not be the best receiver left in the playoffs right now.
But and I'll let you answer whether you think that's true or not in a second here. But let's say they've got best coaching staff, okay, best quarterback, best defense. Let's say they have the best pass catcher, and yet we're sitting here and being like, "Oh, I'm kind of scared of the Bills." Like, is it just the way it's looked? Like, is that what we're doing here? Because if you just kind of break it down that way, it feels silly. And they won 15 games, by the way, and probably would have been 16 if they gave a single flying F in the final in the regular season, right? Like they very easily could have been 16-1, and you're sitting there and you go, okay, what are we doing? Is it just the way it looks?
I mean, I think that's a lot of it. I think I think it's fair for us to say, hey, are you winning by enough for us to think that you can be dominant against really good teams? Now, obviously, they also beat some really good teams along the way, so you have to kind of give them credit for that. I think it's fair to talk about it like that, but at the same time, kind of acknowledge that you're going to be winning some games somehow, some way. And there are some teams that have won a ton of games that just got eliminated that had fewer, quote unquote, question marks, right? I would consider Detroit heading into the playoffs a more complete team with a little bit of a better resume. And of course, they're one and done, right? So I think it's fair to take a look at this Chiefs team and say, I don't know if they've got like the juice of, some of these other Chiefs teams, or even, the Buffalo Bills. But I think when you break it down, like, hey, maybe Patrick Mahomes wasn't an MVP candidate this year, right? But I think, if you're going to just pick a game at random, right, and ask which quarterback you want to have, you're always picking Patrick Mahomes. I think, even though, Josh Allen had this MVP season, which I don't want to discount, he's an outstanding player. It's really hard for me to move past, the fact that the only quarterback in the history of the NFL to have a greater than 50% win rate when down in the fourth quarter is Patrick Mahomes, right? How can I ignore that? When I know like how good this defense is, when I know how good some of this receiving unit is, like Xavier Worthy coming online in the second half of the season, I think is also pretty meaningful. Personally, I wouldn't say Travis Kelce is the best pass catcher left. I think it's AJ Brown. He's not been having a good year, but if I'm going to excuse, Patrick Mahomes for not having a good year and I call him the best quarterback in the NFL, I think I can do that for AJ Brown. But Kelce is close, right? I think that he's probably number two, right? Because I'm not going to pick anyone on the Bills, and that's just the nature of the Bills. They don't have any stars at receiver. They're comfortable with that. And, I'm not going to pick Terry McLaurin. I love Terry. He's incredible, but he's not Travis Kelce, right? So you've got, maybe the best, maybe the second best pass catcher. You've got, with Jalen Watson back and Spagnuolo is the best game planning defensive coordinator left, kind of this remarkable defensive unit. You've got Patrick Mahomes. It is like pretty tough to look past the Chiefs as, this favorite to win and then potentially three-peat. I just think that this is maybe, and I think we're maybe spoiled for how good the Chiefs have been. This is maybe the most threatened, I think fairly so, that the Chiefs have been in a long time. This Buffalo team is closer, I think, to this Chiefs team than, maybe since the Buccaneers, in 2020, were able to knock off the Chiefs. So it's been a while, and the Chiefs have shown vulnerability in ways that obviously haven't been exploited very well by other teams, but in ways that make us kind of wonder and be concerned. But that doesn't mean they're not the best team. It just means they're not the best team by as much as we're kind of used to seeing, and we're kind of grading them on a curve that they set, which is maybe a little bit of an impossible to curve, to work against.
No disrespect to Sanistrill or even like a good pickup like Fowler Jr. I'm talking underappreciated guys that are playing better than maybe the non-fan base thinks. Safe to say that the Bills have the two most underappreciated really good players in Terrell Bernard and James Cook on their roster.
I'm going to go with the Bills, and I'm going to say, and I actually, maybe this is me being a little bit, over my skis, because maybe he is actually being appreciated well enough, but I haven't seen enough people talk about Christian Benford. I like Terrell Bernard, but Christian Benford is playing some really outstanding football this year, right? And he started, right away over a first-round pick when he was a sixth-round rookie over Kyer Elam, right? And he's only been getting better since. I think that he is playing some outstanding football. Now, I don't pay attention to who got selected to the Pro Bowl, so maybe he did get selected to the Pro Bowl, and I'm kind of missing the mark here. But I just think that I haven't seen people talk about him that much, and he has been really outstanding. So I do want to shout him out. I think Terrell Bernard has been playing really, really well. I think that he's a very underrated player. And James Cook is such a good shout because
he's incredible.
Holy. Yeah. I took some unders on him earlier this year, and man, what a dummy, right? I am such an idiot. He's incredible.
I told Ravi, and I'm a diehard Steelers fan, so it's hard for me to fawn over anybody else really in the NFL. But there are two things I left thinking yesterday. Number one, there was this part of me that felt oddly satisfied that Allen controlled a game in which it was about self-control and discipline, right? All the things that people assume he's not when he's got his cape on, right? So I enjoyed that. And then the other thing is just the hidden yardage of controlling the game plan with how Cook could maneuver in tight spaces. It's not running through the gaudy gashing holes like Henry was doing with Buffalo. It's very subtle. It's very efficient, and he can line up and do it again. I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we tend to ignore when we're looking at running backs until it becomes super obvious, right? Like Marshawn Lynch is a really good example of this, is contact balance, the ability to take on contact, stay upright, and churn out a couple of extra yards. And typically we see this with like bigger backs, right? Guys that are like 220 pounds or whatever. But I think James Cook has a lot of really excellent contact balance. He can take a hit and continue moving forward, churning. So like, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily always kind of these flashy big plays, which he does have on his resume, which is really nice to see. But it's also, like you said, getting skinny. It's taking a hit from a linebacker and adding, 2-3 yards to that. And that really like adds up. And it's really frustrating for a defense to line up correctly, play your cues, fit your run fits, and hit the guy in the hole. And then it was a 6-yard run. Like, Jesus, right?
That was their 4-minute offense yesterday. The Ravens fit that in the run game correctly. And you lined up and it was 2nd and 6 for the Bills. I'm like, that didn't look like much. It was just a little subtle shoulder turn. He falls forward. He lunges. They come in and spot it. It's like, wow, it's 2nd and 6 with 4 minutes to go. That was, I don't know. He's just really good.
Yeah. And I think that him kind of being, Dalvin Cook's brother, a lot of people kind of expect them to play very similarly, and you can see some similarities in how they play. But I think just the fact that, he grinds it out a little bit more, maybe he's not as explosive. He's still explosive, maybe not as explosive as Dalvin was in his prime. I think people are a little bit tricked that they kind of see these two players as identical when maybe they're similar, but they've got, I think, a couple of differences here. And I think one of them is that ability to just add a couple of extra yards to contact.
Or if this is it's a little crass, but I'm just being honest, real time. We were talking about quarterback play, and I'm on social media, and I'm like, it's just interesting how even when people aren't even when Mahomes isn't really like what I would call in his game, right? Andy Reid's like, for as smart as he is, I want the ball in my quarterback's hands. Cliff Kingsbury, for all his faults, I trust Jaden Daniels. How interesting is it that in a one-score game on Saturday, the Lions, like, they trusted the ball in the hands of a guy that was like literally just dry humping in the end zone like 90 minutes earlier. I said that real time. I'm like, I can't believe.
That's a text message I received in real
Like,
time.
of course.
Why would the Lions do that in crunch time? Because I wondered all year, and I love Campbell. But I said, will it ever reveal itself that the Lions have a crunch time coaching issue? And it never really manifested itself. Did you think they panicked on Saturday, or did you think, you know what, they're not going to get stops, so they had to slug it out without a quarterback that they felt like was playing well?
I don't think they panicked. I think they don't really adapt their coaching style. When I understand why, but they don't really adapt their coaching style to kind of the situation at hand. I think that they're always kind of primed to try and hit big punches. And sometimes you're ahead. You don't need to do that. I had a friend who tweeted out, hey, if I'm coaching, sorry, Jameson Williams isn't throwing the ball with the season on the line. Zero chance. One of the dumbest calls I've ever seen, right? And the thing is, his dad retweeted that. Jameson Williams' dad retweeted that tweet.
Yeah.
I think that tells me everything I need to know.
We kind of know his. I cheer for him because of his because of his struggles, right? But like they like, I don't know, man. It just seemed like they'll be kicking themselves over that, obviously, but. And
they'll say the same thing they did last year when they were aggressive on the 4th down against the 49ers, which again I'm in support of. I think they should have been, but like they'll probably say the same thing. Is like, well, we coach the same way that got us there, right? We love trick plays, we love being aggressive, and I get it, but like sometimes you do have to modulate your coaching. And again, this is one reason why I like Spagnuolo so much. You have to modulate your coaching to the opponent and situation that you're in. I would never put my season on the line of almost any receiver throwing the ball, much less, somebody who I don't think like I've ever seen before, right? Like I have like a remarkable play in that regard. So yeah, I mean they're like, we're going to throw it to Dan Skipper or Penei Sewell or whoever, right? Like I know that that's like the DNA of the team, but like sometimes you just got to be like, hey, we have Jahmyr Gibbs and we got David Montgomery back and Jared Goff is having an outstanding season. Why don't we trust that fact? And I just feel like they kind of get out ahead of themselves because they love this kind of like big play stuff a little bit too much.
Where did I go wrong on Friday? I had a little. Again, take this with a grain of salt. This is a guy you're actually having intellectual conversations with that said, I think Goff has the most margin for error in terms of going. Yeah, I said it.
Yeah.
Going into this weekend because of his offensive line and Ben Johnson and kind of the collection around him. How did that get so out of whack so quickly? Was it just the fact that they got points off the turnovers, or like I couldn't have been more wrong? But it seemed
I don't know how wrong you were. I think he just kind of explored the limits of your statement. I think he had enough error there to kind of like figure out where exactly that was.
I thought Goff was 1 and Hurts was 2.
Yeah, I think that just in terms of like kind of and I think one area where it kind of went sideways, obviously, is that defense wasn't holding up, right? They'd held up for 2-3 games, but they'd finished, aside from the Vikings game, they'd finished the season with some god-awful defensive performances, right? And I think that that's like something that like when we're talking about supporting cast, it's like, do you have to score 40 to keep up? Because I love the way Goff has played this year, but I don't think that he can consistently always on demand score 40. He's had games where he's thrown 4 picks or 5 picks. In this game, he throws 1, Jameson throws another, and he's got a fumble, right? Like you can have a lot of margin for error, but it's hard to have a 4 turnover margin for error, right? Like I think, he kind of figured out exactly how much error he can get away with, and it's not 4 turnovers in the divisional round of the playoffs, right? Plus another one from his teammate. So I don't necessarily think that you were completely wrong. I do think that maybe you should have been a little bit more terrified of the problems that defense can cause. But I get where that came from, especially when you get David Montgomery back. Like, goodness. They probably should have given I know how excellent Jahmyr Gibbs was playing, so I understand why they gave Gibbs the ball all the time. But you probably should have given David Montgomery a couple of those opportunities that you gave Goff, because I think that you would have been in a really outstanding spot and not, given up that 14-point, lead entering like the bottom of the fourth.
Arif, what do you do with Jaden Daniels as you look at the matchup with Philadelphia? Obviously, he's been incredible, but it doesn't really seem like anyone's talking about the idea that Washington could be playing in the Super Bowl. Like it doesn't seem like that's like, I get they're 1 game away, but it doesn't feel like that's a thing that could possibly happen. But you're right there. This is a team that I know it was a long time ago, but did beat Philadelphia in the regular season.
Yeah, they split
that regular season matchup. Like, is there like how realistic is that path for Washington and Jaden Daniels, or is it just Jaden Daniels? Like, hey, if that dude balls out, like there's no telling what could happen.
That's a really good question. I had a friend text me. He's a Washington Commanders fan. I had a friend text me. He's like, "We're doing it. We're going to the Super Bowl." And I was like, "Calm down." And I was like, "Wait a second. No, you've got a point. Actually, it's just hard to conceive of them as that team. First, I think just because they have a rookie quarterback. I think for the most part, when we see teams make it to the Super Bowl, they've had a little bit of success right before, like the season before they make it to the Super Bowl, and this is like a very kind of sudden appearance. But I think the offense is there. I mean, we have to figure out kind of, how injured Sam Cosmi is and what's going to happen at right guard. I think that's going to be important because the protection there needs to hold up against that defensive front. But, you mentioned Dante Fowler. We've seen kind of the games that Dorrance Armstrong's been having over the past couple of games. We know how good Jonathan Allen can be. And Frankie Louvu's been having a frankly outstanding season, right? He had a couple of mistakes in this last game, but he's good, right? And they know how to use him. Luvu is the kind of guy that I think is not a very good linebacker if you don't know how to use him, and an incredible linebacker if you do know how to use him. And he's a really good blitzer. He's really good downhill. And I think that they know how to use him. And so you've got this kind of setup where you've got, Marshawn Lattimore playing all right. You've got Jeremy Chin playing really well. Sanderson, we've already mentioned. You've got a defense that is, I would say, good enough against most teams to kind of keep you competitive. And then you've got Jaden Daniels throwing to Terry McLaurin. And man, I've been talking about Terry McLaurin like he's one of the most underrated receivers in the league. Finally gets a quarterback, and I feel extremely smart for having said that, given the year that he's had. And they can just go off for points at any time, right? Them and Zach Ertz, and then maybe you'll get a big play from Jahmy Brown, right? So yeah, it's there. They've got that opportunity. I'm not taking them against the Chiefs, right? But they've got that opportunity. They're one game away. We should talk about them like they're a serious Super Bowl contender, because they're clearly much more serious than a lot of the guys that we thought were actually serious Super Bowl contenders even 3 games ago.
Yeah, Dorrance Armstrong Jr. is a guy I'd put in that Terrell Bernard category, pretty underappreciated, like, for what he does in that defense. Let me ask you this, speaking of Jaden Daniels, because this was anecdotally off the top of my head last night. We were having this conversation about, is this really possible for the Commanders in Philly? And I said, let's not forget Jaden, and this was real time. I said, Jaden Daniels, this rookie season is, I can only think of a handful. This was without a ton of research, but I'm old, so I immediately thought Marino.
Mm-hmm.
As a Commander, then Redskin, I thought RG3.
Mm-hmm.
I knew Russ in 12 because that was on the heels of them beating, coming out of the Big Ten. Well, it's a long story. I won't get into that. Wisconsin. But he was significantly better than Ben in 04 as a Steelers fan. I was like, oh, no, I get what Ben did in 04, but he means way more to his team than Ben in 04. So am I missing anything? Like, when you look at the list of performances as a rookie relative to where this franchise has been, remember, just one bad owner away and one coaching change away from like a whole facelift. What is Daniel's impact as a rookie in his performance for you?
I think putting him up there, I wouldn't put him up there with that Marino rookie performance. That is I can't.
Even
one of the best.
Get to the Super Bowl.
Even if, because Marino shows up and he is immediately a top 3 quarterback. Like that rookie performance, it's really difficult to put contextually, but that rookie performance is one of the greatest quarterback seasons, period, I think, that we've seen, and he did it as a rookie. And Jaden Daniels, again, I don't want to take anything away from him. Just saying he didn't have one of the greatest seasons ever isn't taking much away from him. But I think it's kind of up there. I think it's better than Stroud's season, right, which was a really, really good rookie season, right? I think it's up there with RG3. I think it's better than Roethlisberger, like you said. That Russell Wilson season was really outstanding. I'd say it's probably better than that Russell Wilson season. But man, it is tough. I'm trying to think. Herbert's rookie season was really good. Matt Ryan's rookie season, I think, was pretty underrated, actually, if we want to talk about that. But
2020, that was a good season.
Yeah. There's a bunch of these. Like, yeah, that Herbert season's really good. I would say that when you combine, obviously the rushing impact and you include the passing impact, I'd say that, I'd probably take the RG3 season, and definitely the Marino season, but there's not a lot of other rookie seasons that I would take above that. I would take this above the Stroud season. I think I'd take this above the Herbert season, above the Deshaun Watson season. It's another one to put out there, above the Matt Ryan season. But man, that's tough. Also, speaking of, former Washington players, Mark Rippon, had a really good rookie season too. So, yeah, but I think, yeah, this is up there as one of the top 5 rookie quarterback seasons that we've seen.
That's Arif Hassan from WideLeft.football. Arif, we appreciate the time as always. Let's catch up again soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.